Satanian support. From my classes to the sermons at Creve Hall to the professors and all this, I had constant support. When someone is baptized into Christ here at this church, they don't get that support. What should happen immediately afterwards is set up a Bible class, set up a Bible study. We should surround him as much as we can, or her as much as we can, to prop him up. There are some things they're not used to. You mean I have to go every Sunday? When I was a kid, I only went one Sunday in the month. No, every Sunday. Why? Because we want you to hear us, how wonderful we are? No, it's because you can learn. If I only took you to first grade the first day and the last day of school, what have you learned? Nothing. So it's a process. Christianity is being baptized into Christ is the start. It's a process. You never stop learning, never stop growing. Jesus is always going to tell you, this is what you heard, this is what it is. Now, in the end, it says, therefore you shall be perfect, just as your heavenly Father is perfect. Now, we often say, there's no way I can be perfect. In the Greek, the word means mature. As the Father in heaven is mature and doesn't, I would say, have his favorites. Did you ever go somewhere and someone had their favorites? In school, we knew someone was the teacher's favorite. Better yet, you knew you weren't the teacher's favorite. That's when it really hurt the most. Okay? Can you imagine if God had favorites? The question then is, would I be one of them? Chances are I wouldn't be. Okay? We're so used to men puffing themselves up, either by being a great singer or a great actor or a great humanitarian. But I'll tell you, a lot of great men have lived and died within the Church of Christ. And you'll never see a plaque. You'll never see a statue. There have been great women of the church who will never win an Oscar or an Academy Award, but they are greater stars than any human could place. They're just, what temporary titles? Because when you die, that title comes off. Just as you were born, just as you die. It's all the same in the beginning, it's all the same in the end. One breath more, one breath less. Simplify. So perfect means mature. You know, when a child, that's my toy, disliking someone. As a mature, you try to understand the other person's point of view. That doesn't mean you go with them into that. But when people come into the Church of Christ, they still may like to drink. They still may like to smoke. I remember when I was at Creve Hall, I met a member of the church who was a smoker. I was a little shocked that they were smoking. I would have thought that would be one of the first things they'd put out. But as it was explained to me, that's the least of the sins of the world. Okay? You're physically seeing someone smoke. What are you seeing when someone doesn't smoke? What is their character? How do they talk? How is their behavior? Where are they? What are they doing? See what I'm saying? We can see pregnancies. We can see smoking. We can, we have a visualness of a sin. Those are not the only sins. Jesus is trying to say, this is what you've been taught. And here's the thing about the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Essenes and all these people who had power. Let's say the idea about divorcing. So let's say a man wants to divorce his wife. Well, the Mosaic law says only for adultery. But then there's another conservative, liberal kind of a thought. Well, if she doesn't make your eggs, right, you can divorce her. How would you know the answer? There was rabbis. Let's say there was a conservative rabbi and a liberal. You would go to the rabbi you wanted the answer. What I'm saying is you would go to where you would get the answer you wanted. Jesus is saying that's not acceptable. You cannot stack the deck in your favor and see that you're successful. That's what some of the people were doing. I'm not saying all the Israelites were doing it, but that was in the teaching. They couldn't see Jesus for Jesus because they weren't taught correctly. And Jesus is coming along as, he didn't go, I'm the Messiah, hey. He went, got his guys, he went around teaching. It was more important for him to teach the word. And let me say, when I say this phrase, he got away with it for 3 years. I don't mean to belittle what Jesus did, please. That's no disrespect. But he got away with it for 3 years and finally had enough, and they went ahead and rigged a trap, arrested him and beat him and crucified him, had a trial. You weren't supposed to have a trial at night. In the Jewish law, that was so against the law, it was just not unbelievable. You were never supposed to have a trial like this at night. So we all know it was a big setup. The most important thing to teach you tonight as you go through the scripture, this is what you've been taught. This is what Jesus said. If Jesus is saying it, you have to agree with it. You can disagree. I'm still going to hate my enemy. Okay? Today, the enemy is most likely a Muslim. After all, they're terrorists. But Tim McVeigh wasn't a terrorist, a Muslim. He blew up the Oklahoma bomb. The Unabomber, he wasn't Muslim. So now what? Ugliness can come in any shape, size, form it wants to. Jesus is trying to teach you, don't let ugliness ruin your eyesight and understanding. At one time in this country, we were told to hate the blacks. They had to eat in separate restaurants, separate booths. We hated them. And now we accept them into the congregation, or they have their own congregation. They intermingle. We're slowly getting away from that. But that is what you were taught. If you were in Mississippi in the 1920s as a child growing up, that is what you were taught. Everyone had their place. If you were poor white, you had the rich middle white, you had the rich. So everybody had a class system. The beauty of Jesus is he came into the same type of foggy mess where there was a class system between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and those who had money and those who didn't have money, those who were educated and those who weren't educated. He came and said, I don't care about your status. I don't care about your money. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make the playing field so absolutely even that anyone that wants to come unto me can do that by accepting Jesus as my son, the Messiah, putting him on in baptism, comes out as a Christian. That's it. Is that the end? No, it's just the beginning. Will he have heartaches? Will he have sorrows? Will he have joy? Will he have persecution? Yes, he will. Because he's human. It's in the world. So, as I'm trying to conclude this as the teaching, the word love in here is agape, the highest form of godly love that I know of. There's eros, which is sexual, and there's phileo, which is brotherly love. And there's other forms of love out there, phileo, this, whatever. But agape. If I have agape love, that means I want what's best for Ralph. I want what's best for Shirley. Okay? I want what's best for the people of Marathon. I want what's best for those in Key West, the Church of Christ in Key West, or those in Houston. If there's a way to help, you help. If you particularly know of a person in that Houston area who could use something, then I would prefer sending it to them directly. But Jesus has come to say, you have heard. And I grew up, this church, that church, this church, you know what I'm saying? Church bus would come around and I just go. And I didn't know. I didn't know. I know many of you have tried to reach out to neighbors and friends. Sometimes it's not always easy. Sometimes they don't want to hear it. You know, it's tough. It's difficult. But sometimes, in a shocking a sadness, sometimes you can get into a situation where you can do some teaching. You ask God to help you reach out to someone. I was raised in Pinellas Park. And my first contact with a member of the Church of Christ was Neil Davenport. Many of you may know Neil's mother. He never invited me to the church. This is in elementary. The next time I connected with the Church of Christ person was in high school, 10th grade. Mrs. Watson. Bob Watson was the elder at Northwest, helped founded that congregation. She never invited me to the church. I came years later to know that this is what Neil was involved in, and this is what Bob Watson. So I'm saying is, invite. I may say no. I may say yes. So, any comments? See, I know you come here and you get a lectureship, and I think that's fine, that's great.
You know, you were saying about the Pharisees and Sadducees and all that. We basically have the same thing in the whole thing. We have all these denominations that don't teach you the truth. I almost became a minister when I was 15 years old.
Okay.
Then the minister got transferred, the church went downhill.
Were they going to give you a license?
But I've joined a lot of different churches in the beginning before I even knew there was a church.
Right.
I never saw it. Right. There wasn't. And when I heard, I went to a Bible study because that's what I was looking for in all these different congregations I went to, and none of them happened. One said, they've been through this so much they don't hear it. Well, I wanted to hear it.
Yes. Yes.
Because I've heard that symptom and I heard that, all this other stuff, but stories. Never heard it.
What Ralph was saying was that he has been to various churches growing up, that in some cases, and he went to one church where they said, well, we don't study no more because we already know it.
Well, they said these people don't hear it anymore.
They didn't want to hear it anymore. So sometimes you get into a situation where the way I would say is some of us were raised in the church, brought to the church as children. First of all, figure out how you got to come into the church, and is that the same tactic or teaching that you would like, you know what I'm saying, to use towards someone else? I think if we use a little reflection on how I would like to have been taught, or then we do the same. You've been great. Thank you. Love all of you. You've been a wonderful congregation. You know, Next time, talk.
I heard something recently, and it was actually said by my big brother, and it kind of got my attention. Would you rather eat chocolate brownies or eat broccoli? Would you rather ride a bike or would you rather run in a race? Would you rather pet a puppy or pet a snake? Would you rather watch TV or would you rather play a game? Now, we need to think about things we don't like and things that we do like. When I was saying that list, you got brownies or broccoli, you've got to be kidding me. Of course I'm going for the broccoli. I mean, going for the brownies with fudge on top. Okay. Some things we like more than others. We might even say that we love them. I know I am not the only person that heard this. I know I'm old, but I am not that old. When I was little in elementary school, I remember saying the most dumbest thing. Someone say, "Man, I really like that." Say, "You like it?" "Yeah." "You love it?" "Yeah." "Why don't you marry it?" I heard someone say it. Aha! So when I think about that now, I think, how dumb was that? You like it, you love it, you don't want you to marry it. But we say we love a lot of things. But you know, saying I love pizza and I love my wife, that's a different kind of love there. Okay? I love soccer. I love pizza. I love candy. I love my mom. I love my dad. But what does love really mean? According to the dictionary, love is a feeling of warm personal attachment or a deep affection, as for a parent for a child or for a friend. When I was thinking about getting married, I asked my dad a question. Because, in case you guys don't know this, I was almost 27 years old. I dated a lot. And I had this one girl, and there are still people in this congregation that can remember this, even though I was like 18 years old. There was a girl I dated. Her name was Loma Harrell. And she had the cutest little accent you ever heard. And so one time, her and I, we were dating. And she told me she loved me. Well, that's not good enough. I want to know, how much do you love me? So I said, "How much do you love me?" And she said the cutest little thing. She said, "A whole bunch." But she said it in her Alabama twang, "I love you a whole bunch." And I thought that was so cute. And I started laughing about that. And next thing you know, she got me a card. She had a card printed that said, "I love you a whole bunch," and I carried that in my wallet. But I loved that, and that was so sweet for her to do that. But the question is, you know, why did I have to say, "How much do you love me?" You know what I mean? When someone says, "I love you," isn't that it? That's done. Why should they have to say, how much do you love me? But because I think we start understanding, though, that there are levels of love. Is she all right? Okay. All right. And if you don't believe there are levels of love, then how come we are told to love God, and we're told specifically how to love God, aren't we? When we say, "How much do you love God?" it's not going to say a whole bunch. You're supposed to love God with what? Your heart, mind, and soul, and that covers everything. That covers everything. So it's not like, well, I love God a whole lot. But you know what? Have you ever heard somebody, and when I told you about my big brother saying something, he said something last week in Bible class, and it got my attention because, wow, it made a good point. He said, have you ever heard anybody say that they could not live without something? I'll tell you, I could not live without air conditioning. Oh no, I couldn't. You understand what that means? That means that you need this so bad that you need it more than anything. You need it so much, if you didn't have it, you would die. And then people say, what about my children? I love them. What would happen if I lost one of my children or something? I couldn't live without that. But I want you to understand something. This is what my brother said, and I thought about it, and I'm like, wow. If you say that there's something you couldn't live without, you are putting that in front of God. And we're supposed to love God first and more than anything. God will take care of the rest. God will take care of the rest. But we have to be very, very careful about not putting anything in front of God. Love Him with your heart, your soul, and your mind. In 1 John 5:3, how do we love God? Go to 1 John 5:3. Anybody have that? I just want to make sure you guys are following along. 1 John 5:3. If someone has it, read it out loud for me, please. For this is the love of God, that we keep His commandments, and His commandments are not burdensome. If you want to say, I love God, you ever had your children tell you, I love you? I would say, my child would tell me, I love you. And I'd say, you know what, that's words, but I tell you what, when I tell you to take out the trash, what's going to happen? You don't love me quite as much then, do you? What if I tell you to make up the bed or go mow the yard? Actions show that you show your love. You know what I mean? It's one thing for me to tell Beth I love her, but let me tell you something. Bring her some carnations, boom! Got it. So we have to show our actions, and the actions are by keeping God's commandments. How do you show the love that you have for God? By keeping His commandments. The problem is, that sounds easy. And the Bible says it's not burdensome. His commandments are not burdensome. It's not something we can't handle. It's something that we can handle. But it's not going to be easy either. It's not going to be easy. The problem is staying with following His commandments, because we have a tendency to follow them for a while. Look at the Israelites. They would follow Him for a while and then do what? Go fall away. Then they'd follow Him for a while. Every time they had a strong leader, they were right with God. They would stay right with Him because they had somebody to lead them right there. Follow Him. But sooner or later, you almost know they're going to fall away. But you know what? That's all right, because you know what? You can't just blame the Israelites. You can't just say, how ridiculous was that? Because guess what? We do the same thing. We follow for a while, we get weak, and then next thing you know, we fall away from God. Then the whole idea then, once we've done that, is to get back on the right path. That's what I want to ask you tonight. Are you back on the right path? Have you fallen away? Have you never been on the right path? Have you never been baptized? Whatever your need, come forward as we stand and sing.